There are overheads we have been unable to meet. We have been forced to make some very hard decisions, including negotiations with staff so that we have salary cuts. For us to be able to break even, we are trying to get different strategies of how we do business. One of the things we are trying to do is to create employment through trainings.
Since the pandemic started, we have really been affected because the numbers of the workers have reduced. Because we were 340 workers, and right now we are 50 workers. So most of our colleagues, they are still at home suffering.
COVID has impacted everybody globally. Undugu Fair Trade has not been spared at all. And even pre-COVID, already we were noticing some decline in our orders. And we were trying to work around it. And COVID even made the situation more worse because we lost about close to 70% of our business orders. Most of our buyers were also affected by the COVID restrictions and impact in their countries. The market is closed, their shops are closed, the outlets are closed, and therefore we could not get orders come through.
Good morning, everyone. From where you're watching us this morning, and welcome to a live show organized by WFTO Africa and the Middle East. This show is part of a number of activities that is taking place not just in Kenya, in South Africa, and across the region and across the world to celebrate the World Fair Trade Day. And the theme for World Fair Trade Day 2021 is Building Back Fairer. And this theme, of course, is informed by what COVID has done to our businesses, to our lives, and continue to. And so we want to engage our panelists this morning, not just to share with us their experiences, what they have done, what they're going through, but also to look at what sort of solutions they are seeing in the effort of building back fairer. Of course, we're using the theme of the terminology building back fairer. Others are saying building back better, but it's the same thing. How do we begin to do things and businesses differently? And so this is the context of the conversation today. And this is today's Friday. We have one webinar in English. Tomorrow, on the climax of the World Fair today, there will be two other webinars on the same topic, the same theme, but for the French-speaking constituency of WFTO community, as well as the Arabic-speaking. So look forward to this video, this live webinars tomorrow as well. So not to say more than that, I want to welcome this morning our two guests. Coincidentally, these two guests are co-founders, surprisingly. One is a co-founder for the shoe company, and Nava and Pieter is a co-founder for Turqle Trading in South Africa. And to set it off, I think just to give us an introduction of ourselves, Nava, please tell us what Enda is all about and the work that you do there.
Awesome. Thank you very much for having me here, and also in celebration of, basically in celebration of the day. And so basically, Enda is actually a Swahili word. It means go, and we work with Kenyan athletes to develop running shoes for runners around the world. The name Enda was inspired by watching Kenyans support their athletes. You'd hear just when the athlete is about to get to the finishing line, everybody would be shouting, Enda, 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 you know, like go, go, go. And so we thought it would be a nice name to name the company. is working with Kenyan athletes. The reason we started the company was twofold. One was seeing the opportunity of Kenyan running. If you look at other countries with great reputations, let's say Swiss chocolate or Italian fashion or German cars, there's an economic benefit to that reputation. Whereas in Kenya, we've been really good at running, but haven't really taken part. And so Enda was the realization of Kenya kind of stepping up to that table and saying, we also want a seat in the global performance footwear industry. The other reason was also we are a social enterprise. And so a lot of what we do is about actually developing the community and kind of growing hand in hand with them. We have various community initiatives that being investment of a percentage of our revenues and not profits into community development. The idea is that as the company develops, so do we. And so it's something that we really believe in. And right now we are based in Kenya, but we do serve a whole community of runners from around the world.
Thanks, Nava. I saw on your website a very interesting mission. Could you recap that for us, just as part of your introduction?
Yeah, so we actually took a really long time, like we've changed our vision for some time, but right now we are fighting for a just and equitable world, and the best way right now how we are doing it is through running shoes. And so if you look at how the company is structured, a lot of the extra work we do in the community is about justice and equality, and a lot of the projects we support that. The reason for that was we wanted to create something bigger than us, and we also want to show that business doesn't necessarily have to be about maximizing profits. You could actually do something that's about fair communities and fair societies, and we can go hand in hand to do that.
Excellent. Thanks a lot. Interesting. We'll pick it up from there in the context of COVID and building back fairer. Pieter, tell us about Turqle trading in South Africa.
Thanks, Bernard. Yes, the first question everybody always asks us, what is a Turqle? And there's an interesting story about that. When we started the company, Rain Morgan and myself, who were the co-founders, we tried to register a whole bunch of what we thought were interesting sounding names, and all of them came back, no, there's a similar company, there's a this, there's a that, and we already had the first container standing ready to be shipped, and we still didn't have a name registered, so we couldn't have a bank account, we couldn't register for tax purposes. So one night we just decided, Rain's favorite color at the time was purple, mine was turquoise. We made it Turqle and said we will change it at some stage. That was 23 years ago, and we are still called Turqle. And it still works because it says something about us and about who we are. But basically, Rain and I both came from, we worked in the development field, training people, providing market or finding access to markets for products that people made. At that stage, mostly handicrafts or crafts. But we found that it was not sustainable, certainly in the late 90s, where people would buy a craft item and they would only go buy another one in 3 years' time when the vase or the painting or the belt or the whatever the item was, when they felt that they needed a new one. Yet food, if people like it, it firstly sustains them, but secondly, if they like it, they go buy it again next week. So we set out at that stage to produce fair trade food and to do it on a sustainable basis, both as a business model that we took the decision we will not accept funding from anybody. We wanted to prove that you could run a business that is not about profit maximizing and that it is about benefiting the most number of people, and that you could run it sustainably. And fortunately, we made good decisions along the way, because that was started in 1997 and we are still around. But yes, we produce a range of food products that 97% of our market is export, and then we do some in South Africa. We produce at 7 different factories that employs about 870 people currently. And that, in short, is the story about Turqle trading.
Thanks, Pieter. I mean, one of the things that I know about Turqle trading is the whole question of staying small. What does this mean? I mean, everybody wants to grow. I mean, What is so much about staying small for Turqle trading?
Well, again, we took the decision that we did not want to build a corporation for ourselves. We would rather see the producers, the small farmers, that they grow through our efforts, as well as our customers. Where many of the same customers that we started off with in 1997, we still have, and similarly from the producers. And so our philosophy has always been anything that we can outsource to another small business, whether it is a box manufacturer, whether it is a label printer, let's support industries and grow those. We have our specific skill set, which we will use to facilitate that growth. And that is very much still the philosophy. We only have 5 people that work at Turqle. We also made the commitment that we would spend, well, Rain and myself in any case, 25% of our management time will be spent on voluntary work for, in this case, World Fair Trade Organization, of which we are involved in a range of different things. Because that is where our passion lies, is basically we do not need to get to the top of the pyramid and say, well, great, we've made it and we are wealthy or whatever. We would rather see, well, we can get high enough up that pyramid, but let's see how many people we can take with us that we all get to a point where we can say we all have enough.
Excellent. Thanks, Pieter. I think that notion of being part of the bigger community, I think is important. I think you share the same with Enda. I mean, listening to what Nava has already shared with us. We want to go deep into the conversation, and if you are watching us from wherever you are, if you have a comment to share with us, please feel free to do so. We'll share that with a wider audience of the fair trade community, and of course we are recording this conversation, and this will be available on different social media platforms. So feel free to share with us your comments, your observation, even questions if you have. So I want us to look at briefly what COVID has done to each one of us, to both Enda and Turqle trading in South Africa and Enda in Kenya. So Nava, what has COVID been like for you from a business point of view? We are a year old with COVID, and we do not know where the end is. Of course, with the vaccination, I think it's a positive thing, but COVID and its impact is still with us. What has that been like for you at Enda?
I would say Enda is an exception compared to most companies, just because I remember when the pandemic started and we realized the repercussions, we went to our advisory board and we were like, okay, so what do we need to do? Because one of our friends had sent us an email and they were like, cut all costs, don't spend on anything. Like there was a very urgent messaging from someone else who runs a business, like this is going to be a difficult time. And then one of our advisors basically told us, here's the thing, when it comes to health, wellness, and fitness, whenever there is a situation where humans feel like they are going to be closed up, there's no freedom of movement and all the things that are likely to come with COVID, you will definitely see an uptick in the health and wellness industry. And so based on the advice of people who'd kind of gone through the financial crisis, the dot-com bubble, we actually decided to invest more in production. And so we were lucky that we were able to get our supply chain sorted out just before all the borders closed and all the factories closed. And as a result, when COVID hit, we were basically because the e-commerce platforms were working well. And so when COVID hit, true to what our advisory board had advised us, we saw a really great jump in the company's sales and revenue. That being also the fact that running was the only exercise that was allowed in many places, and people stopped going to the gyms. And so running just basically became that one thing that you could do. And it's the essence of Kenyan running, which is what we've been trying to, communicate, that all you need is a good pair of running shoes and you can run anywhere. So from our perspective, COVID was really a great boom for the company. and we were able to see phenomenal growth for ourselves. But at the same time, we also, some of our friends' businesses went down. So it's kind of existing in a place where, in as much as the performance was really good for us, it was not good for other companies.
So interesting. So it is, I mean, for many people, it's easy to say that COVID has been a distraction, so impacting on businesses negatively. So it's, I mean, the reality is also that COVID has created opportunities for others. So will Enda be a good example of an enterprise that for which COVID has been a great opportunity? Would that be the case?
I would say that's the case, but that wouldn't really be the true reflection. There was a lot of preparation for the business that allowed us to take advantage of the opportunity. And a long time ago, such opportunities were, it was a challenge. For example, we didn't have money to set up a store, like a physical shop. And so because of that limitation, we decided to create the best online experience for our customers. And so also because we weren't able to reach a lot of our customers from different places around the world, we had to think of ways to build that fulfillment line from our production to the end customer. So a lot of those things were challenges that forced us to be lean, to be more online. And so when COVID came, it just turned out that frugality really paid off for us because we had invested in systems that allowed us to thrive during COVID.
Maybe now you hold that thought, because I think more what we're interested in as we build back. What are some of those practical solutions that businesses need to look at in their journey to building back? And I think some of the things you already.
Can you hear us? Did we lose you?
Sorry, I think I lost. I think there was a surge. Can you hear me now? Sorry for that. Yeah. I think so. So one of the, as we go to this conversation, we are interested in some of those practical strategies that you applied before or during COVID that other enterprises can learn from. Pieter, just in a nutshell, what has COVID been for Turqle trading?
Well, obviously, when it hit, I mean, in South Africa, we went into a absolutely hard lockdown on the 26th of March of last year, where literally all businesses had to close. We had curfews from 7 at night until 6 the following morning, which obviously affects everybody. Our whole thought process was, firstly, obviously concern for our staff and concern for all the producers that we work with. And the whole idea was we will do whatever we needed to do to ensure that not one single person lost their jobs, that one single person was not paid at the end of the month. So everybody obviously went home and worked from home. After a bit, they gave us permission that if you were in the food industry, you were seen as an essential industry, you could work. But our local market in South Africa basically went to zero overnight, because most of the places that we are supplying in South Africa they cater for tourism. So airport shops at national parks and things like that. So wine farms that we're not allowed to operate. So we had to literally stay right. And as well, our export business, we normally would go and visit our customers at least once a year, sometimes more, or do trade shows. And that is how you promote, which we then could not do. You could not travel. So we very quickly said, right, what is needed? Firstly, people want comfort. People want reassurance. The good news about COVID, if there is good news, is that it is a global thing. Not one single human being on this planet has not been affected by it. So we all share a common plight. It's not just something that has happened in Africa and therefore the rest of the world carries on or whatever. people also became open to the notion that we need to do things differently, which again provided opportunities. And people also wanted to feel after a while that they are making a difference, that they are able to be part of something good out of this tragedy. What we did is we very quickly then had to learn, firstly, how to use social media properly, how to monetize social media, because we could not go and see customers, we could not present products to them. So Rain and I did a quick study, and as well, similarly, that people were wanting comfort and reassurance. We had to work out recipes and things that we could share with them that would provide comfort food using our products, which we did a very quick study of how to do that, how to shoot little videos that are 40 seconds that you could put on Instagram that people are not going to lose their interest, and then how to monetize it. We fortunately managed to do that relatively well. In Switzerland, our e-commerce sales went up by 5 times. In the UK, it doubled. And that is what basically sustained us and ensured that the work could carry on at the various producers that we work with. The other side of it, it also gave us the time to say, right, we need to be innovative. What do we do in order to maintain this? So we did an intensive new product development. While we had the time, we could not do our normal work. And we basically developed a whole range of new products. And in Germany alone, in the last quarter of 2020 and the first quarter of 2021, we managed to launch 11 new products. We managed to develop the first fair trade ketchup in the world, which is fortunately selling very well. So again, going back to basics, things that people know, and just making it in a fair and ethical way. But it certainly forced us to be innovative, forced us to look at using the technology that is available instead of just throwing our hands up and saying, oh dear me, this is a tragedy, what do we do now? And we again, fortunately managed to not, as I say, the goal was that no single person should lose a job or be retrenched or anything. And we have so far, after a year, managed to maintain that there are some that have actually employed additional people instead of losing people.
Excellent. I think one of the challenges that businesses are being given is that it's not good enough to return back to business as usual. I mean, that is the slogan you hear a lot. Would you, Pieter, identify some of those things that you have stopped doing, that you are not doing anymore, just because, and you never probably go back to them, even post-COVID?
Well, a few things that we've done, which again, the time that we could use for reflection of what are we doing, how is our business, and we used it to redefine our mission, our vision. We realized that essentially what we're in is, well, to simplify it, we're in the hope business. That is what fair trade or ethical trade or social enterprise is all about. We're also in the happiness business. We want to ensure that the people who make the products work in conditions that allows them to be happy, to be fulfilled in what they do, and similarly, the end consumer that gets our product and opens and uses it, that they are happy with that. So that was one way of, and that then forced us to look at a whole range of different things. So we had to change, or we decided to change some of the packaging to make it more environmentally friendly, because that is part of building back fairer. Instead of doing what is easy, saying let's change things that are good for the planet as well. I mean, one of the fair trade mottos is people and planet, and those are the priorities, not profit maximization. So we looked at how do we do our packaging more environmentally friendly. One of the products that we launched, which was a hand-harvested sea salt, and every element of the packaging is either fully compostable or recyclable or made from recycled materials. And similarly, the way that it is harvested, it is hand-harvested, it is sun-dried, it is hand-sorted, so there is minimal processing. So those were a few of the things that we looked at and said, well, how can we do things differently that builds back fairer, build back better? And the other side of it as well, we looked at our own staff and said, given the trading conditions of last year, there was not the option of giving people increases or year-end bonuses or things like that. So what we decided was that we will split our company basically in two, and that our employees will get given basically a company, and they run the whole South African market. And they are equal shareholders in it. They decide everything. We will cover all the overheads for the next 2 years, and to give them strength, to build up strength to get onto their own feet. And then they run with it as their own company, which they own fully. It's a separate entity which they are owners in. So for us, that was also, it pushed us to that thing to say, well, that is the right thing to do, so that they have a vested stake in, and they can take it as big as far as they want. We will support them with as much as we can.
Okay, Pieter, just hold that thought. Nava, I think one of the things Pieter's told us, I think the thing that they've done during this COVID period is launching new products, which apparently it seems very successful in Germany and Switzerland. What was the experience like for you in Enda? Was that part of the journey you've taken, or something different?
Yeah, first I have to also just say, listening to Pieter, I very much agree with people, putting people at the center. I think one of the things that COVID taught us was that at the end of the day, there's productivity, but at the end of the day, there's people, and so people, essentially the world almost ground to a halt because people are not able to move from one part of the world to another. And so I think COVID was a good reminder that at the core of everything we do as people, as the environment, as us being part of that environment, taking care of humanity is the most important thing. And so it is, it's similar kind of to what he said. We did also launch new products, and that product actually did really well. But I think besides the launching of the new product, I would say the underlying opportunity or something that other business would do is basically figure out how to access multiple markets. Because in his case, he was able to go to Germany and Switzerland. In our case, we were able to expand in different countries of the EU and in the US. But in reality, the situation on the ground here in Kenya was very dire. So I felt that businesses that were really just looking at local supply chain, local markets suffered significantly more than businesses that were export oriented, because export orientation essentially just means you're spreading the risk. If Kenya is down, the US is up. If the US is down, maybe Switzerland is up. And so I think that's one of the key things that businesses have to be taught to be able to do, because I think in most instances, people. And sometimes we also have to teach people how to create the market for themselves. How do they enter? How do they enter into these markets without necessarily having a buyer? I think those are now the critical things that if we are able to teach people, then their businesses are likely to survive. If I look at the proportion of businesses that were local vis-a-vis export-oriented, I would say about 98% of the local businesses either went under, cut costs, moved from their offices, like they had really their consequences. Companies that were more export-oriented, even though sales went down, they still managed to make sales because they were able to access other places. So I would say underlying the introduction of a new product is also the access to different or multiple markets that allow you to be able to to sell your products and to be able to continue like making money and being able to pay people, because ultimately we want people to be in a position to earn money. So I would say that was our experience. And if I look at the gaps locally, we just have to teach people the how, not say, access a local market, but basically say, here's how you are able to access a market outside the country. And therefore, their business is the risk is more balanced as opposed to having everything in one basket.
Good. I want us to try and now shift gear a little bit. Of course, COVID has affected businesses differently. And so part of the reason we're having this conversation also is for other businesses to get inspired, to learn something from what experiences that you already have. And as part of the World Fair Trade celebrations and the theme of building back fairer, we want to see what sort of solutions are available to businesses based on your experiences that they can borrow, they can learn from as they build back fairer, as they build back better. And Pieter was already talking about some of the things that they're doing differently. And Pieter, I want us just to build on that conversation. What, from the experience of Turqle trading in South Africa in the midst of COVID, if you were to speak to other enterprises within fair trade movement, within WFTO, within Africa, that are perhaps struggling, they're probably not doing as well as you have been able to do. What sort of solutions or suggestions would you give to them?
Bernard, I think the main one would be think out the box, or forget that a box exists, because in one sense, I don't think business is ever going to go back to what it was pre-COVID. The way that business works, the way that people works, the way that people are doing their purchases, that is for the fair trade or social enterprise world. In a sense, COVID has united people that they are thinking more about how they purchase, what they purchase. If they are standing in front of a shelf with T-shirts, and there's T-shirts that sell for $2 and there's T-shirts that sell for $20, that they have the choice, because you know that the $2 T-shirt, there is no ways that the person who made that earned a fair wage for making it, because it is just not sustainable. But I think there's a far greater awareness, and we need to capitalize on that. We need to learn how to tell our stories differently. And we have as well to do a collective storytelling about the things that we value. And for us, as we have said, it is people. It is how people are able to live a decent life, the people that we employ, the people that we work with. And I think if that is at the forefront of every decision that businesses make, they will find a very receptive audience out there because of COVID, that people are a lot more community-based and drawing to each other. Basically, each day is also a new day, and we have to be flexible. You cannot do things the same way that you've done them and stare yourself blank about, oh, well, that's not working. You have to say, well, fine, it is not working, but what do I do now? What is plan B? What is plan C? What is plan D? And go out of your comfort zone. Again, it is a tough situation for any business. I mean, we certainly have to probably work twice as hard now to sell a pallet of food products than we in the past had to do to sell a container load full. So again, you're sort of thinking that you can carry on just working 9 to 5 or 8 to 4 or whatever your particular times are. Those are also gone, especially if you are a business owner or business manager. It means you do what you need to do in order to get the results, because your people that you are employing depend on that. So it is more just about flexibility. Learn. There are so many resources that are freely available if you just have access to the internet about learning new skills. I learned how to use Instagram using YouTube mostly, how you monetize it. And there are so many resources that we can have that does not cost money. You don't have to go to an institution to get that. Make use of that. Get your people that are working in the different areas of your business to utilize those resources that are available. Talk to your customers that you have. Certainly in our case, in overseas market, where we obviously cannot open shops in every country that we would like, but we have partners there. So we were talking to them about doing fulfillment of orders. If we can set up a social e-commerce platform there, but that they handle the logistics, and you share the costs and the risks. So again, they look at how do we do, and similarly, I think it all comes down as well to product development. If your products that you've been selling for years are not selling, you have the problem. It is not the consumer that has that problem. So you then have to see, well, what are things that I can make that consumers will want? And that ties back into, again, the whole thing that people want things that are, I think, utilitarian, that have a use as opposed to purely decorative, because of that whole thing of reassurance and comfort, and that they also feel they're making a contribution to somebody on the other side of the world, basically, or other side of the country. So those are all things, but we have to be flexible, nimble in our thinking of how do we not only survive, but how do we grow and come out stronger on the other side.
Thanks, Pieter. Nava, maybe for you, you're not just speaking to the fair, to the community. Of course, this is part of the platform that you're on, but for other businesses, if what you see as opportunities or solutions that enterprises can embrace as they get onto this journey of rebuilding. I mean, rebuilding from the disruptions of COVID.
Thanks. I would say Pieter has done a really, really great job at summarizing most of the points. The only thing I would add is identifying the purpose for your business. I think a lot of people will open up a business and want to sell to anyone and not really analyze who's their customer, why do they buy from you, where are they located, and that's the back end of the work that is essential even before you go to your customers, because then you are going to be more efficient in how you spend every shilling, cent, or dollar that you have, in order to, because you're more targeted, right? So I would say in our case, we knew that we wanted to create a community that was based on people believing why these shoes have to be made in Africa and not in Asia, for example. And so we understood the business and we said, we want to be a social impact business. We want to have customers who understand like that. We want to have a supply chain that is ethical and supporting. We want to use renewable energy. So we did all that even before COVID. And so by the time COVID came, we knew exactly who we were. We didn't have to wait for someone to say, oh, you should do recycling. Like, our product from day one has been produced on renewable energy. We basically changed our packaging to make it reusable, as opposed to boxes where people would get the shoe and throw it out. We basically put them in bags. We became a climate neutral certified company. So the thing is, when COVID came, it found us in our element. We weren't really switching to something because we already knew who we were. And COVID just essentially amplified that in a way that made it easier for us to grow, because it's always been in our DNA. So we knew our customers live far. We had to invest in really good payment systems and a really good website. We knew that Instagram was something that was really popular. So we had already started to create a way to engage with our community. And so one thing I have learned is, yes, as you are basically planning out your strategies, if I use the words of Ngugi wa Thiong'o, the famous writer, he says you have to secure the base, like know yourself first. Once you know yourself, then you know who you're going to meet, you know why you're meeting them, you know where to meet them, and then it just became so much easier. So I would say we didn't really get confused, or, like COVID wasn't really an obstacle, because a lot of the things that people were doing now, we were already doing, but we didn't do them because they were fashionable or good. We did them because we knew that they were essential to the success of our business. So even before, critical to thinking outside the box is understanding yourself and your business to such an extent that you live your values, and then I would say all these other things shall be added unto you.
I see. Good. I think one of the one of the uniqueness about COVID is the fact that it came with lockdowns. I mean, I think that's where the greatest impact of COVID has been, that you are locked down in your city or in your country, you cannot move. And I guess that has also forced us in a way to begin to look inwards. We look at, I mean, for some time, even other than technology, export was a challenge. How has this, Pieter, in your case, begin to make you begin to reflect or focus on, for example, the domestic market in South Africa? And how is that going? Is it something that as a future for you now? And I mean, of course, being learning from the experiences of COVID and lockdown and that stuff.
Bernard, to give a simple answer, the domestic market, because we are still under lockdown situations, is still very much, but our whole business model has always been, I mean, for the first 15 years of our existence, we only exported. We did not sell a single product inside South Africa. We were, strangely enough, approached by one of the local supermarkets at a trade show in Paris to say, well, we would like to have your products, and that is how we actually started doing the local market. Look, part of our strategy was, and the reason we gave it to we set up the separate company that our employees now own, to focus on the local market, is that the export market keeps us fairly busy in terms of finding new markets, developing the right products for those markets. So we have not been paying the right amount of attention from overall, when we were still one entity, to the domestic market. It was just something that ticked along, and we have our own e-commerce shop and things like that. Now that it is owned by our staff, hopefully they will put more impetus behind it and grow it to be a fully fledged, self-supporting business. I just wanted to add a little bit to what Nava had said before, in terms of when you start a business or how to run a business. That was also one of the exercises we went through during lockdown, is as part of redefining our mission, because we've had the same mission statement basically from 1997, and it was, okay, well, the world has changed and we have changed and the business has changed, so maybe it is a good time to revisit it. And there's a whole process, it's by a guy by the name of Simon Sinek, is to understand your why. The hows and the whats are easy to do, but if you don't understand your why are you in business? Why are you doing the things that you're doing? What are your values? Because again, people will support you because they share the same values that you have, not necessarily because of the products that you sell. If they buy into the values, they will buy the products, because then they understand where it is coming from and what your why is about. And I think that is something as well that many businesses at times fail to first define, is what are my values and how do I tell that story of those values, and how does it reflect in every decision that we basically make in our business. And if we get that, then people will support you. They will go the extra mile as well to support you. And I think that is a valuable lesson. Another thing that, a little tagline, I was part of another discussion the other day, and tying in with the comment that I made earlier, that every day is a new day. There's a company that their mission or their vision basically is that they do best decisions delivered daily. Every morning we get up, we have a new opportunity to make the right decisions, or even change the decisions that we made yesterday, and do it daily. Do that exercise as a day. Where is my business? Is it still true to its values, and is it doing what it is supposed to be doing? And make those decisions every day. An example, for instance, of also just your question about domestic market. There was a company, also a story that we came across recently in Vietnam, that was making decorative baskets. When COVID hit, obviously the tourist market on which they depend also just literally collapsed. So they said, well, what is something that people in our country use every single day? And those are steamer baskets, because they steam a lot of food. They changed over to that. They targeted hotels, restaurants, and things. And today they are selling more steamer baskets than they ever did decorative baskets pre-COVID. And that is, again, just where you look at what are our skills, what are the local needs that we can fulfill, and how do we do that changeover. And I think a lot of small businesses, again, need to have that flexibility to say, let me stand back and see what else we can do with the existing skills, the existing raw materials that we have access to, and for which there is a need in my immediate local market. And how do I, again, turn that into an opportunity that, and in this particular case in Vietnam, where it's now a bigger business than it was before, and they don't supply into the export market anymore, they don't supply into the tourist market anymore. It is purely a functional thing that is used every day.
Thanks, excellent, Pieter. Nava, yes, go on.
Yeah, I was just saying, I can't overemphasize what Pieter has just said. I feel like it's so important that you kind of like want to underline it in red and bold and say that flexibility essentially is, you know, like every day is a new day, and you cannot go into business thinking that basically you have to throw out the old way of thinking and come up with new ways. And COVID really presented a lot of challenges for businesses that were not flexible in their thinking, because the world has changed. It's probably never going to go back to the way it was. Our habits have changed. And to sit there with your products and say, oh no, now I'm not able to sell that. I think the future belongs to the ones who basically sit and say, okay, so this has changed. For this day, it's not the same as yesterday. How do we adapt to that? And I think a lot of the businesses, even the local ones that I've seen that were able to adapt, are those that looked at what they have, looked at the changing market and consumer behavior, and said, what can we do with what we have? So I'm just emphasizing that because I feel like without that flexibility, a business will essentially die. And it's a very, very important point.
We take a short break. I think in the next minute or so, Kenji, you will share with us a short video in that regard. But Nava, just in one word, I mean, you export, but what opportunities have you seen, of course, influenced by the changes that you made as well as COVID within the domestic market for shoes, the running shoes, for example, in Kenya in that case?
So I would say we also basically like looking inward, also looking and saying our local market share has been growing, but just basically saying how do we cater to it more, because now we had more time and more people were at home online and we had that opportunity. And so we essentially turned to content creation and basically helping people, as Pieter said, understanding the why. And I cannot, you know, like business is about people and they invest in us. And even though they would be like, well, your products are this or that, but once we got people to understanding why we are making these shoes here, why it's important for people to have a job and to get that agency, why other businesses can exist because of our existence, we found that people really supported the cause in terms of just making it better. And so what we decided to do was also do collaborations with other businesses that were struggling and basically use the power of our brand to work with them and say, let us do something together and launch it as a collaboration between us and you. And so collaborations with local artists and designers proved very successful. And it was also good for us because then we were able to give them sales because we were able to access the local market, but now we're basically like really looking at beefing up our supply chain locally. And that was really good because not only what our growth wasn't just ours, we also grew with other entrepreneurs whose businesses were having a hard time.
Good. We will take a short break as we watch a video. And when we come back, we will look at the closing remarks, just to see what the bigger environment is like. I mean, one of the challenges that we face sometimes has to do with the wider environment, whether it is policy or governance that also affect our businesses directly or indirectly. And we try and touch briefly about that. What sort of challenges do we see in that direction as we draw closer to this conversation? And again, if you are watching us and you have a comment and or a question, please feel free to share that via text platform. So let's take a brief break, and we come back briefly. Kenji.
For us to be able to break even, we are trying to get different ways, different strategies of how we do business. One of the things we are trying to do is to create employment through trainings. We want to train our workers so that they're able to get some skills so that they can be able to live at their own free will. So once we empower them with training, we'll be able to find ways of paying them for their years and then allowing them to start their own business. So we've partnered with organizations such as Eye2Eye, who are experts in doing training. The persons with disability are trained on the skills they want to do. And for the ones who are still 45 years and below, there's a network where they're able to gain employment because as per the government directive, 5% are supposed to be absorbed by all the other organizations. We also want to go into maybe farming because food, we've realized, is something which is eaten by anyone. So within Mombasa, Bombolulu is based within Mombasa County, where we have several nearby hotels. So we'll approach different hotels so that we are able to supply food stuff to them because handicraft business is always shrinking.
Some of the lessons that we've learned are mainly on the limited space that we operate in. That, as you know, we only work with the people who make handcrafts, and therefore the limited space that they work in has given us a lesson that people need to diversify, that they need to diversify, especially in products that people will need even in times of situations like this of COVID-19.
What I would advise the ones who are working here, surely to me I have learned a lot. I have learned it's good to be saving something for tomorrow.
Good. Welcome back. I think we before we look at the big environment, Pieter and Nava, you have touched, I think, in your previous comments around technology and media, and how you have successfully made use of these platforms to grow and strengthen your business. I want you just to have other businesses just to underscore that fact, the place of media technology in the business today, whether small or big, whether export or local. Just help us to underscore that fact based on your own experiences in South Africa and in Turqle trading and in Enda. Pieter, let me start with you.
Sorry, Bernard, with me. Sorry,
yes.
your sound cut out. Sorry. Yes, look, I think it's actually fairly simple. Most people nowadays have a smartphone, and with a smartphone, you can talk to the world. It's as simple as that, whether it is in your local community, whether it is a global community. You take a simple picture, you think of the story that you want to tell with that picture, the words, and you learn how to use hashtags. And through that, you can either link into existing communities or existing interest groups, if that is something that resonates with your values, that you feel that you want to talk into that. And it's as simple as that. It is literally learning how to use things like, if it's a business-to-business linking, link up, you use LinkedIn, where you can communicate. There's different forums there that you can get and learn as well. There are people there that freely give their advice, their experiences, and share it. If it is in terms of marketing, it is things like still Facebook to a certain degree, but Instagram as well.
Use your networks.
Use your networks, and they are as well. They exist in the cyber world. Look, again, the world has changed that we cannot necessarily physically go and see people. We cannot necessarily have gatherings of people where you are launching a new product, or where you can demonstrate to people how to use it, or even in certain cases during lockdowns where shops are closed, and therefore it's not that they can go to the shops, and there you learn how to use this media. And as I say, the nicest thing about it is all for free. You can download most of the apps for free onto your smartphone. You can learn how to use it for free if you have access to the internet, which most of us do have. But have a strategy. It's not just a throwing things out. Have a strategy. What is it that you want to achieve? What is the goal? Who do you want to reach? How do you, again, they use hashtags or create your own and get people to join in if it's clever enough. But I mean, just to use an example, some of the hashtags that we use in terms of the food business, you go and look and there is 13.6 million followers of that particular hashtag, or people that are contributing towards it. So by being selective in terms of which ones you put in your post. And I think as well, the whole thing is tell stories. People want to hear stories. They do not want to either be lectured, which if you look at some posts, it's like a lecturing that you have to do better and you have to do this. Tell your story. Make it authentic. Put your values across.
Your basket maker. What does she love about her basket?
As a basket maker or a shoemaker, or for us, one of the food people, what do they love about making that basket? What part of their heart or soul do they put into that? That's the story that we tell, because that resonates with people. It engages them emotionally. And again, that's that why, or the values that you communicate, and people respond to that. But make use of it. And if you don't know, learn. There are ample opportunities to learn how to use these things for free.
Thanks, Pieter. Nava, tell us how technology media is driving your business, and how this can also be true to other businesses.
Yeah, so again, I'm just kind of adding on to what Pieter has said, because he's done a very comprehensive overview. And again, I will go back to identifying who you are as a business, because what you're communicating is who you are. You know, I can't be mathematician and I start teaching someone about geography. I will connect more with fellow mathematicians, and so it's the same with your business. Even the fact that technology has presented opportunities, it is a tool through which you communicate your ideals and what you're doing and your values to somebody else. So the technology is essentially something that's helping you, but you have to know. So from us, essentially, we educate people on why we're building, who is building, where we're selling, who our customers look like. Like, you are basically having a conversation through technology. And so the strategy is important, because the strategy is based on your ideals. And so even though you're using technology, you're kind of basing it on the key things you want to communicate. The second thing I would say, also Pieter has alluded to, is the vastness of free resources available on the internet. I call it the YouTube University. You can learn anything. I prefer YouTube because it's more visual, but there is anything and everything you can think of. Somebody has probably recorded a video about it. So I think learning is not really, there's no excuse to finding out information on how you can do it. And again, if you look at the nature of content that basically reaches more people, or you could say viral, it's never really about using the highest quality camera or using the best podcasting equipment. It's usually the idea and what that person is passing. And so I think a lot of businesses have been caught in this trap that they need the latest camera, the latest, all these gadgets, whereas your smartphone is as good as it gets. It's about the idea you have behind and what you want to communicate and how you communicate it. And so I think businesses can also look at technology not as something that's daunting, but more of, again, looking at what you have and making sure that what you have, you're using it in the best of your ability. The other thing I would have to say with technology is, ultimately, as a business, you want to buy and sell. And so in as much as you're giving out content and in as much as you're sharing this information, you have to think, how am I getting revenue from all of this? And so there's different ways you can get revenue. So for example, you can have your website. Let it not just be something that's static. You can include a blog, make sure that the payment options are working so that I'm like, I want to buy from you, but I don't know how to give you money, so you have to think about that as well. If you're thinking about Instagram as well, and Facebook, I would say it's the same thing. There are different ways that you could get people to buy through. So making sure that you're tagging the products, you're doing everything, basically make it easier for the consumer to purchase from you. And you can do this through different ways. You could use influencers, which you don't always have to pay, by the way. Like, again, kind of looking from a small business perspective, you could use affiliate marketing, you could use other people to talk about you. But there are several ways, but you have to kind of keep the goal that for you to continue, the business has to be sustainable and it has to sell. So even as you use technology, at the back of your mind, you have to think, how am I making it easier for me to generate that revenue and to basically make money out of it? And I think the last thing I would say with technology is, when you open up yourself, whether on your website or on social media sites, you're opening up yourself to the world. And so there has to be a shift of thinking of, I am just supplying my town and my village, and that basically you're supplying to anyone. If I look at our website, we have people from Brazil, from Mexico, from Guyana, from different places, and they're basically saying, how do I get my product to where I am? And so you have to think of logistical costs, but also just kind of like challenge the businesses to think that once that, in as much as the internet is providing opportunities, no longer are you serving your local locality, you are serving, and therefore you have to also look for advice and look at how other businesses are doing and figure out how you're able to supply someone from where you are to another part of the world, essentially. Figure that out, because once you're able to do that, then it's much easier to build back better, fairer, and in a way that's sustainable for you and the business. I see there was a question. Yeah.
Sorry, excellent insight, Nava. One of the challenges that have been given as we celebrate the World Fair today is to speak to policymakers, challenge them on some of the issues that businesses struggle with, even as they build back fair and build back better. I just want to give an opportunity, Pieter, in South Africa, for example, if you look at that context, and if you were to raise one policy concern that stands on the way, or that's possibly stands in the way of businesses as they endeavor to rebuild, what would that be for you in the context of South Africa? And Nava, I also want you to begin to reflect in the case of Kenya. What if you look at the policy environment and for businesses, including SMEs, what is it that you want to ask your policymaker to look at, to review, to just reflect on that as Pieter share with us a bit of his reflection in the context of South Africa?
We're not in South Africa. I think in one sense we are very lucky that our labor legislation is very comprehensive. It is also implemented. And in that sense, it covers things like fair working conditions. It covers things like collective bargaining, which is a right in terms of unionization and things like that. It covers gender equity and equality. So from that point of view, I think the environment is, in general, very good. There are obviously, again, like in any other environment, people that will try and circumvent that. But I think where South Africa certainly can improve is support of small businesses. The amount of red tape that there is for a small business that wants to start doing things, both at a local municipal level and as well as on a national level. Personally, I do not think that it is necessarily giving people the opportunity to grow, giving small businesses the opportunity to get going and to put food on their table and to employ other people. I mean, we're sitting with one of the highest unemployment rates in the world. So employment should be a priority, and I certainly think from a legislative point of view, there is not enough. The other thing that needs to change in South Africa, I think, as well, is a victim mentality. Many people still have that mentality instead of seeing the opportunities in front of them. And politicians, unfortunately, at times sort of seem to encourage that, because that gives them more relevance or power, or whatever one wants to call it. But I definitely think, and we do work on that in terms of trying to change the amount of red tape that stands in the way of small entrepreneurs being able to start their own businesses.
Yes.
I'd say at the beginning of the pandemic, the government took really great steps in terms of making life easier. They basically reduced the tax rates for VAT. They reduced the taxes on income, and so I think it's also in line with what Pieter said in terms of making the environment easier and better to operate in. And so when you look at the effects of COVID-19, a lot of people lost their jobs, a lot of businesses went down. There's essentially less money in circulation. People are more in need. And so to be able to build back better, you have to start with a focus on the people. What do the people need? And sometimes cash is one thing, but sometimes they just need an operating environment that allows them to be able to operate. So again, less red tape, just make it so much easier for someone to operate a business, like a single user permit, instead of having to deal with opening a business, fire checks. There's just so many things you have to think about, making that easier so that you focus on what does a small business need at this moment. It needs access to financing, it needs payroll protection, or at least payroll insurance to make sure people remain on the payroll, even if at a minimal rate. It needs to figure out how to access markets, both locally and internationally. So how do we be able to do that? We also need to make sure that in as much as there's restricted movement, we basically allow essential workers. I know before it was mostly health and food workers, but at least in the recent directive, they also included factory workers as people who are able to move about. So basically look at what needs to be done in the economy and how do we make it easier for people to exist in some ways. And in cases where people don't have much, also think about social welfare systems. It's not their fault that they can't make money. It's just because they are not able to go to the place where they used to make money, considering that 80% of the country is informal. And so when you are building with people at the center, you're able to make policies and procedures that are much easier at tackling the problems that people are facing. And so I would say that flexibility is one. And then again, there's the flexibility in terms of policies, and then the flexibility in terms of ease of doing business. Essentially, just make it easier for people to be able to go about their work without having to worry about so much, because already COVID has done much. So I would say we started off in the right path in terms of making life easier from a COVID perspective, but then at some point we kind of went back to normal despite the pandemic still going on, and despite a lot of people still being out of work. So there is a way to build back better and fairer, but to do that, it has to be a people-centered design. We have to look at the people, what do they need, and how can we, as a government, create policies that allows them, you can't take the agency away from people, you create a policy that allows them to be able to do what is necessary in order to raise their revenue.
And we are at 10 minutes past the hour. I think we need to draw to a close. Both of you have been sharing the screen. One is sitting somewhere in Nairobi, one sitting somewhere in South Africa. I'm not sure whether you have a question for each other. Maybe there is, maybe there's not. If you do, please, Pieter, if you have a question or something you want to follow up with Nava and vice versa, please, I want to give you a moment to do that before I say the last thing.
Bernard, there was just 2 questions posted in the comments section, and if you don't mind, I will try and address them. The one was, how is your business? Yeah, the one was, how is your business taking climate change? Are you thinking about contributions to COP26 that takes place in November? Just to answer that one, I think as a collective, speaking from the WFDO, we are making contributions to that. We will actually be participating in COP26 as the World Fair Trade Organization to make our contributions. We have also, during this past year, revised one of our principles that deals with the environment to incorporate a whole host of additional criteria that members need to adhere to as part of that is environmentally friendly. The other question was about advocacy work in our country's respect. I think that was the question that we answered in the last comments in terms of which things need to change with government and whatever else in order to facilitate or enable small businesses to be able to actually start and grow and survive and employ people. So those were just two of the comments. I don't know if you and or Nava have any other comments to make in terms of those questions.
Yeah, I'd say from an environment perspective.
Sorry, Nava, go on.
Yeah, I was saying from an environment perspective, Enda is a climate neutral certified company. So what that means is essentially we measure and account for our carbon footprint. And basically, the money that we pay as a result of that, as of last year, went to address deforestation issues. So basically, as part of the climate neutral program, when you account for your carbon footprint, it's basically reinvested in a place where you're basically making the environment better. So Enda is actively involved in that. And we have, as a result of our contribution, we've actively been in a pool that has contributed to reforestation programs in different places around the world. In terms of advocacy, we try as much as possible whenever we have an opportunity to speak with the Kenyan government to basically let them know of the challenges that we are facing. We also do write regularly on LinkedIn about how to make to improve the ease of doing business in Kenya. So it is a small thing, but it's also not really small because you do actually find that in those platforms, the right people actually do get to read and call us and ask us what do we do about that. So I'd say from that I've learned that there is no small feat as long as you're doing advocacy in your own little way. You never know who's reading or who's watching, and that's basically helped us to at least put the issues of small manufacturing business in front of the right people in government who are able to change things.
Very well. I think as we come to the close, we obviously celebrating World Fair today, which the climax is tomorrow. Brenda, no, sorry, Brenda, Nava, you have shared with us this platform to share your own experiences and the idea that you exist to increase fairness, justice, and equality in the world. I think it fits very well with the celebrations. And I just want to give an opportunity to express or share your wishes as we celebrate World Fair today. That will be your parting shot as well.
I would say my parting wishes are that people should always be at the center of everything, and sometimes we put them aside. And usually, even when a company is making profit sometimes and still letting people go despite having millions in reserve, I would say people are at the element of everything, you know, and I can't remember who quoted it, but basically when the last tree is cut and the last water body is poisoned, then when we'll realize that we did one. So I always think about that and think that as human beings, we are stewards and caretakers of the environment, and we cannot run business in a way that is not sustainable. The reason why we are where we are today in terms of climate change is because of thinking. I want to maximize as much as possible, forgetting that the world is an ecosystem and it needs ability on each other. And so I would say, cutting short, like if we put people at the center and if we allow people to live a life of dignity, to live in an environment that of respect and where nature is thriving. And then for me, it's simple. If we do that, then we cannot all get to live in a world where we want to live in. But the minute we start thinking me, then I will be able to do something that is an injustice to you, but I will not care because it allows me to benefit. I feel like that's essentially where we go wrong. So it has to be people-centered right from the beginning.
It's a lot, Nava. That's well said. Pieter, what is your World Fair Today message?
Well, I can only echo what Nava has said, and but I also think if each one of us that are watching this or participating tomorrow just makes one decision on how we purchase, where we have a choice of purchasing from a small business that is doing the things for the right reasons and have people at their center, or whether we buy from a multinational. And if each one of us makes that decision of where we spend our money, we're already making a change in the world. And I, for one, Nava, looking forward to having Enda shoes in South Africa, so that I have a choice of buying a people-centered product as opposed to having to buy from one of the big multinationals, which is all the choice that we have at the moment. Yes, well, as Rain reminds me, I need a UK size 12, please. But yeah, I mean, I'm joking about it, but yes, that is what it is. And as I say, it is how we have the power as consumers, as business people, of how we spend our money and where we put our purchases, and whether it is from a supplier to our business, whether it is for our own personal use. And there are always choices. And I think tomorrow is a good day to just reflect for 1 minute on how do I make my choices of where I put my money, and who is it going to help or benefit and give the dignity of work at the end of the day.
Thanks, Pieter. Well, I believe the words that both of you have spoken in a small way will contribute to the change that we are looking for. I mean, that's what I want to take. These words will touch someone somewhere in Kenya, in South Africa, in other parts of the world. So I just want to thank each one of you for your time and also the opportunity to share your experiences, insights. I believe other businesses that will have the opportunity to listen to what you've shared with us will pick something to take home with themselves. So, I mean, with them. So thank you very much for your time and for insight that you've shared with us. As I say, tomorrow we have got 2 other webinars, one in French beginning at 2 o'clock, and then the other one in Arabic beginning at 4 o'clock. And it will be part of this conversation to take this message to consumers, to policymakers, to other businesses as well. So thank you very much. And I wish you all the best, even as we celebrate the World Fair Today tomorrow.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, Bernard.
Same here. Thank you.
What can you, we do? Unite to change, empower, lead, and innovate. Because fair trade matters.